Hi everyone, welcome to another brand new episode of the Outlier Podcast. We've got Brian with me. Brian is a long time friend. Hi Brian, what's up?
Hey, Anurag. Nothing new. Just rolling.
That's not the Brian I know. Brian is always full of energy. He's like, man, let's do it. So Brian
I
is there.
lied. There's a lot new. There's a lot going on, but it's all good.
I know. So, quick introduction who Brian is. Brian is the Chief Retail Officer of Webster Five Bank in and around Boston. So, he has deep experience working with the larger banks. He has spent considerable number of years with TD, followed by Cynoverse, now with Webster Five, right? So, he leads the retail channel for Webster Five, responsible for leading the portfolio, growing it, managing it, right? So, for the lack of better words, Brian, in case I've missed something, feel free to add it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Lead the retail channel, which in a small community bank means you wear a lot of different hats, right? Branches, contact center, digital banking. We also have oversight of our wealth management function and small business bank.
That's a lot. I think you realize that that's a lot.
It's fun.
Brian, let's start with the first question. So, what keeps you going?
Yeah, good question. I think being on the Outlier podcast keeps me going. In all seriousness, I think anybody who knows me knows I'm a bit of a contrarian. I like to play devil's advocate. Maybe I'm a bit of a maverick. And so, just kind of being able to look at things differently, challenge the norm, challenge the status quo, have the opportunity to really innovate and iterate on what we're doing on a day-to-day basis keeps me going. That's what kind of fuels my engine, so to speak. But then it's also continuous learning. Like every day in this job, I learn something new. So I am nowhere near knowing everything, and that's a good thing because it's all about continuous education and growth.
That's interesting, right? Absolutely, I get what you say. Let's get into a few questions, right? You leading retail for a community bank, that's interesting. So, what's your vision for the future of retail banking? I mean, and how are you aligning your team for this?
Yeah, future retail banking is that's bigger than a bread box, I think. As you and I have discussed before, there's the really growth of the challenger banks and the fintechs and all of the, I'll just call it disintermediation of traditional banking practices, whether that's payments or checking accounts or even lending on the consumer side with embedded banking really standing out. I think there's going to be a continuous evolution there where the concept of primacy gets a little bit more eroded. We've traditionally looked at you've got to be the primary bank, and you measure that by if you have a checking account with the customer, if they're using it with direct deposit, et cetera. And, nowadays, you can count on one hand out of every maybe 100 people that don't have more than one financial institution in their wallet. And it might not just be, well, I have my bank and then I have a credit card with somewhere else. It might be I have my bank, I have Acorns, I have SoFi, I have a number of different things. And all of those different companies are competing for a sliver of that wallet. So, my vision for retail is that there's going to be more of that, and that specifically community banking, needs to zero in on what we do well, and where we can deliver value to those customers. And I think that's true both on the consumer side and the business side. I do believe that retail banking is becoming more and more small business oriented. It's been a gap for a long time. I would say decades, and especially working in larger financial institutions throughout most of my career, I saw it. We do really good handling branch-based micro businesses, and then maybe they have a small loan opportunity, and then they grow to this kind of mid-level, and there's no one really there to specialize in that and care for them until they get large enough for commercial banking, right? That's the gap that I think community banking needs to bridge, and it's a huge area of focus for us at Webster Five. My team, we're focusing more and more on in the branches having business development, specialists and experts that have a handle on the small business lending side, but also light cash management services, and just a general understanding of the overall cash flow needs of businesses. And given that, small businesses drive 90% plus of the economy, I think that's a huge area of opportunity for retail bank.
Absolutely understand. So that's very well rounded an answer. In terms of growth and engagement, I want to ask you a question. So my question is around, so how do you approach driving both deposit growth and customer acquisition? Because it's a very fine line, right? You get a lot of
Right.
customers with very less deposit volume, and get, maybe very, very less number of customers with concentrated high deposit net worth, or you do a mix of that, right? So what
Right.
is your 2 cents on that? I mean, how do you prioritize one over the other, and like why?
Wow, you're just leaning in with the softball question. So that's not a hard question to answer at all, is it? No, I mean, like in all seriousness, I think that's like the crux of the issue, right? Is everybody's got limited resources they can deploy, and how do you prioritize from a strategy perspective what you go after? Because you're absolutely right. Like I would say in the short run, and you've heard this probably with every bank and credit union you've talked to, gathering deposits and, filling the deposit bucket is, a huge priority right now, right? You're not going to get there with a whole bunch of, new account relationships that, take a while to mature and fund, right? So you've got to have some kind of offering to bring in deposit relationships or, grow your existing deposits. But then in the long run, especially in the community financial institution space, there's really an existential question going on around who are our customers and how do we, maintain ourselves as a going concern? Because the more mature clientele are leaving through natural causes, and we really need to bring in those new households, and they might not have considerable deposits now. So it's really an investment in the future. How do we prioritize that? I mean, I wouldn't put a number on it like 50-50 or anything like that. But we definitely have differentiated strategies for both of those groups. We know that really franchise value is based on new household acquisition and growing the bank and our penetration in the marketplace. But we also know in order to continue to fuel the balance sheet and fund our asset growth, we need the deposits now. So it's really a question of how do you deploy very targeted marketing programs for both of those efforts, and we have irons in the fire.
Got it. Understand. Let's move on to combination of human plus digital. Right now, digital is becoming table stakes nowadays, Brian. I sound like a broken record, but I tell every single time. Now, with so many fintechs, right, offering seamless digital experience, right? It takes like what, 2.5 to 3 minutes? I think 2.5 minutes to go to Chime and open a checking account, right?
Sure.
I'm a customer of Chime myself. So how does Webster 5 differentiate in terms of, human connection and personalized services? Because competing against fintechs with the same mindset, that's difficult. Their spends are different, the budgets are different, but what you have is that human connection, that community. How are you, marrying that with your digital prowess?
Yeah. Another age-old question that sounds like a binary choice, right? It's like, do I do physical or digital? And as you correctly noted, you don't get to make that choice. You have to do both. And so it's like, all right, well, I'm going to make investments in both spaces. I need to choose wisely in how I make those investments. I think the question is certainly one that if you talk to a national or regional bank, is important to them because the size of investment they have to make is substantial. But I think it's even more meaningful for a community financial institution because we can't afford to bet wrong. If I build a new branch and expand into a new marketplace, like I have to get that location right because I can't absorb it as a whatever a restructuring charge in the next earnings cycle or something like that. I'm going to live with that. Same thing on digital, right? You can't go to a conference and, not talk to 50 to 75 to 100 different digital providers that want to upsell you CRM, or, here's our specialized embedded lending service or whatever. And they're all by and large, good solutions, but we can't have them all. What's really important, in my mindset is there isn't one good answer. There isn't one set of products that you should invest in that are, going to be the golden egg. It really depends on what your bank strategy is and what you're focused on. So, for me, looking at, our digital platform, we have a whole bunch of API integrations with different fintech providers. Some of them have really strong engagement. Some of them don't. So we have to get really focused on what our customers tell us they want, and also providing education for customers about what these services do, and then measure the utilization and the engagement and make decisions around what we want to continue investing in, and what we need to move on from, because those capital dollars are scarce, and you've got to bet wisely.
Absolutely understand. So that is very well noted, right? Followed by that, I have another question about data. Now, it's becoming table stakes nowadays, right? I hate to say that AI is fancy, still fancier for community financial institutions, because we still need some time to fix the data. We still need some time to create the roadmap to actually identify use cases, right? And not just plug in a fancy AI tool that promises you to do everything, right? So that's what my 2 cents are. But still, with the evolving role of data that's playing, right, in specifically in retail banking channel nowadays, right? So data is becoming table stakes, whether it's like, branch performance, consumer experience, or even cross-selling, right? So even if you want to cross-sell a product A to B, gone are the days when you're just doing blanket campaigns because you love your CD, because you think the rates are amazing. No one cares. You think that your APY for your credit card is amazing. It's good, right? But we have to find cross-sell strategies that are customized to a specific consumer, right? That means that, again, we've been talking about the word hyper-personalization, but hyper-personalization has happened maybe 20 years back. Other industry, we are still catching up, right? In community banking. So how do you think is data, or rather data will help you provide better service, one, and second, will help grow and maintain profitability of,
Yeah. We don't make any decisions without looking at the data that's available to us. And it's becoming more and more apparent that you really need strong data and insights from that data in order to make even better decisions and more focused outcomes. So I guess thinking about it, it kind of goes back to your earlier point about digital versus, in person or whatever, right? Like humanization, I guess. It's increasingly important. You mentioned hyper-personalization, right? We need to provide hyper-personalized experiences regardless of the channel the customer is, working with the bank in. And I think that that's really the new frontier. Is people want to operate in digital. They hit the app, they check their balances, they do whatever way more frequently than they go to a branch. But that experience by design intuitively is impersonal, right? How do you make it more personal with insights engines and insights about their spending and their subscriptions and, all those things? And then to your point, you can't do blanket campaigns anymore. I can't drop 100,000, pieces of mail and, just try to carpet, an entire geography and hope that something sticks. We need to be targeted in our offers, one, because we have the data to do that, and it's a more efficient use of it, so you can do more of it in a more targeted fashion. And two, because the customer doesn't want it unless it really is meaningful to them. I mean, I don't know your situation, Anurag, but I think you live in the city, right? And if I'm offering you serving up an ad that says, "Hey, take out a home equity loan to build a new pool in your backyard," and you'll be like, "You're nuts! Like, do you know me at all?" And so I think by the influence of industries outside of banking, consumers have really come to expect that you're going to know them and that you're going to speak to them in a way that shows that you know them. And that sounds like a high bar, but it really isn't. I do think it comes down to getting your data organized in a fashion that it's, more usable. And you know that better than I do.
No, Brian, this is amazing. I want to just wrap up the episode with one last question, right?
We're done
So,
already? Come on, man. I'm just getting started.
interesting. Uh, I get a lot of this feedback, right? It's about what's your perspective on the evolving role of the branch? That's an age-old question, and everyone might ask you, right? Because you lead retail. So are you imagining physical locations to be the next future, doubling down on relationship-based banking in person? So what do you think is the future? Because I have a very different way of looking at it, working with the big banks and small credit unions and community banks. My way will be a bit different, but what do you think? Because you come from the same background. You worked for TD earlier. Now you're running retail for Webster Five. You have a unique perspective, right? So I would love to get that from you.
Thank you. Yeah, my perspective is you need to have physical locations in order to engender trust in your customer base that you are there for them. Whether they use the locations or not, I mean, that's an age-old debate, or how they use them. Maybe they're not cashing checks anymore, but they're going in when they have a problem with their debit card. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Having the location is important because it's another channel, representing your brand. And you've seen different companies approach this in different ways. I mean, Chase has made pretty significant investments in their branch network. That doesn't mean we as a community financial institution should go out and build 20 more branches because, we're trying to keep pace with Chase. They already have an entrenched customer base in every market in America because they have credit cards or car loans or whatever with these households. And so they're cross-selling into those customers. So I don't think anybody should chase or, play copycat with the national banks, but it's really important to have physical locations as really, I guess, a representation of your brand in the marketplace, particularly as a community financial institution. And, I think last kind of comment on that is, certainly for Webster Five, where we have a pretty, significant skew towards businesses in our portfolio and a focus on, growing that, and particularly in the small business segment. Small businesses use branches and they expect to see them. And sure, you need to have great digital tools with auto books and easy to use digital banking and things of that nature, but they really need a relationship manager too. And, our market managers are really one-to-one with each branch there to serve the needs of small businesses. So that's my vision.
Ran, this was great, right? A power packed 20 minutes. These are the most effective sessions. I tell everyone that 21 minutes is the magic time. If I'm able to finish an episode in 21 minutes, that goes amazing, right? So Brian, thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate the insights that you've shared with us, with your background in large banks and now leading retail in a community bank. It's invaluable. Again, Brian, thank you for doing this.
No, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to tell the community bank story. I don't think it's told enough, right? And I think we add a tremendous amount of value to the community. And so any opportunity to, carry the torch, we'll take it. So thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.